In this lesson we're going to continue working on completing the square. So it's going to be called Completing the Square Part 2. And in this one, apart from just write things in perfect squares, in this video I want to use the method of completing the square to solve some quadratic equations, because remember last time I told you that not all of them factorise, so we can solve them by completing the square, or as you'll see in the next video, the quadratic formula. So I want to tell you what the method is for completing the square here. What we do is, this is just a possible one, this first step. If x squared has a coefficient a, then we divide everything by a. And I mean everything. But you don't have to divide zeros, because if you divide something by 0, you get 0. Then we'll move the constant c to, this is just a shorthand way of writing right hand side, so we'll move c to the right hand side. And then we'll find a constant c such that the left hand side is a perfect square, and we'll add this new c to both sides. And then what we'll do is we'll factor the perfect square on the left side. And then to get rid of the square, what we'll do is we'll square root both sides. And then we'll end up with a linear equation, and we'll solve that linear equation. So let's go through 3 examples using this method. Here's the first example. I've got x squared. I'll write it down again down here so I've got more room and you can follow it easier. I've got x squared plus 2x minus 8. The first thing it says is if we've got a coefficient a in front of the x squared. In this case we haven't, so we don't need to do step 1, so then we'll go on to step 2 and we'll move the constant c to the right hand side. And remember, because we're moving it over, that becomes a plus 8. And then we'll go on to step 3, where it says we have to find a c such that this side here is a perfect square. So to make this a perfect square, I add 1. And because it's an equation, if you do add something to one side, you have to add it to the other, so also add 1 to this side. And now, because this is a perfect square, I can factor it. Add them up, I get 9, so let's just do that. So I've got x plus 1 squared, and if you multiply that out, you would get this x squared plus 2x plus 1. And remember I told you what you do with this coefficient here. I've just divided it by 2 and squared it. If you square 1 you get 1, so that doesn't change. And then next step is to get rid of the square with square root both sides. So I get x plus 1. We're going to get 2 roots here. So to show that, I put plus or minus in front of the square root, because if you don't put that, we'll assume it's the plus root. So we'll have to do that. And then if I take the square root, sorry, I wasn't supposed to do that first, I was supposed to that plus sign shouldn't be there. I was gonna get ahead of myself there. So then there's a minus 1 there. So then we'll get x is equal to this. So this has got 2 roots. Could be 3 or minus 3, so we'll get 3 minus 1, or minus 3 minus 1. So one can see that that comes to 2, that comes to negative 4. And actually, this equation up here factorizes, so what we can do is we can quickly check x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0 by factoring. And I'm going to do this really quick so we've got more time, so you can check this later if you want. Then we get that when we factor it, and then here we get x is equal minus 4, and then here we get x is equal 2, which is the same as what we get here by using the method of completing the square. So you can see from that that the method does work. And also, if you're starting off on those questions, it's a good way to check that you've completed the square right, and a good way to practice it, because you can check by factoring. And then we've got x squared minus 5x plus 3 is the next one. So I move 3 over. Then I complete the square. So I get, I'm halving this, so I get minus 5 halves. I'll square that. Then can factor this. And what you do when you factor is you halve that again. So as you remember, you should have seen that. From now this is going to indeed come to 13 quarters. So that's it. And then I square root both sides. And that's going to be the solutions, the positive root of this and the negative root. And you can write that with a common denominator if you like, but that's an acceptable form. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And now I've just got one example I need to do where we've got a coefficient of the x squared. So all I do to start this off is I divide by 3. So I get x squared plus 2x minus 2/3 equals 0. Move it over. Complete the square. Factor. Square root both sides. And subtract 1. So then I get minus 1 plus or minus square root 5 over 3. And that's going to be my solution for that problem. And that's how we'll complete the square.